It just ends too quickly. Welcome
Mm.
back to another edition of Hobby Think Tank. I am Danny, and that's Rigoberto.
Hola, ¿qué pasa? ¿Qué tal? What's shaking,
Uh,
everybody?
this is episode number 660 of Hobby Think Tank. Um,
Oh my
we
God,
don't go in order; we just give them numbers. And today is Willie Mays' birthday, so here,
that used to be a perfect amount of cards for one set, according to Fleer and Donruss. I think at one point 660,
it also
six
used to,
110 cards sheets.
and it would make you third all time in home runs.
Okay, well,
And now
I don't
that's
know. I don't know if that math adds up anymore, buddy.
it
Yeah,
doesn't anymore. It's a
yeah.
sad thing.
Boomer.
Yeah. But I don't want to reveal too much of your personal life, but one of the things we want to talk about tonight is the national card shows, Fanatics Fest, or I think they're calling it. But the logistics that go behind putting on a production of this scale, and you are right in the center of that in your real life. And so I thought maybe we talk about, everybody wants the national in their hometown. What's realistic and what actually goes into putting these things on.
Yeah, I just spent 7 days. I got back Friday after 7 days at the home of Comic Con in San Diego, and it's really an anchor show for those folks. But it was one of those things where it was the perfect place. It was in LA. It was close to LA. It was just the perfect place for the show to grow, and it stayed there. Unlike something like E3 used to be a massive entertainment electronics expo, was in Atlanta but moved to LA, and so shows do move around, but it doesn't mean they have to. It's just two examples there of shows rotate all the time. Some do East Coast, West Coast. Some do a couple years in one place and a couple years in another. But there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot that kind of uh, most of us, it goes right over our heads as a hobby. So yeah.
Is that your San Diego vacation hat?
Yeah, I was working. It's never
Not
vacation.
vacation,
Yeah, I went to
traveling.
I went to 2 games. I actually here's a quick anecdote for you. I was hungry, and I was at the convention center, and the Phillies were playing across the street, so I went over, bought a cheap ticket, got a $15 pizza, ate it there for a half an hour, and went back on my meal break back to work, and it was probably cheaper than it would have been to eat at the Gaslamp District or the hotel. It was quicker and cheaper to go to the ballpark, get a pizza, eat it, and come back.
It's
So,
supposed
hey.
to be a beautiful ballpark.
It is not. It is, but it's not my cup of tea. I've run into this in Atlanta as well. I like a ballpark you can walk all the way around without having to think. And San Diego
Yeah.
and Atlanta's new park are pretty tough to walk around without, going up steps and ramps and getting lost. So maybe that's by design. They want you to hit the beer gardens, or as my grandfather would say, the beer gardens, and they want you to spend your money, get lost, spend money. But it's nice, I guess. But I prefer a place like Citizens Bank or Camden Yards where you can walk around the concourse and have fun,
Yep.
watch the game. I had ended up getting a vegan ice cream sundae, which means I just got the helmet. They didn't have any ice cream left, so
Did you
I
get the spoon?
no
I just want a
spoon,
spoon
yeah,
in the
no
helmet.
Jimmies, I call them Jimmies, no Jimmies or sprinkles, no ice cream, just ended up guy felt bad for me, gave me a little helmet, so, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sad you're not wearing that instead of the Padres hat.
Yeah, well, it's back there. It's the newer version, just the brown with the different color brown SD. This is old school, man. It's what I do now. I go to stadiums and I buy set hats from the '70s, and if you look over here, you'll see Tito Fuentes,
There you go.
whole glory on the
I,
screen there.
I
So
thought it was Gary Templeton.
Gary Templeton came along a little later than old Tito.
Yeah. I probably am a Terry Kennedy, Ozzie Smith, Tony Gwynn Padre era.
Yeah, and speaking of that, one of the problems, the biggest flaw of that new ballpark they have there is that apparently they retired Steve Garvey's number, so that's an eyesore.
Ooh.
Yeah, I wish they would just
Ooh.
cover that up with a Banksy. A nice Banksy would look
thought you
great
had to, I thought you had to be good
there. No, I never have to be good.
to get your number retired.
Yeah, well,
to get the statue. Or
maybe there's an amount of children he had out of wedlock. It just said Steve Garvey 6. I don't know what it means. Could be whatever.
and
Maybe
you
it's
know
a
what?
yeah,
The way politics are going right now, I'm going to laugh at that one
it's a
anyway.
body. I think it's a body count, not his actual uniform number. So anyway,
That's
let's stop talking about that, Mook.
all right. So, um, talk to me. Comic Con San Diego square footage, just roughly, so we can kind of get an apples to apples, or at least some.
Well, they expanded that, probably double the size of that place specifically for Comic-Con. It was crammed in, and like I said, it grew with the show. I'm heading next week to the biggest convention center in the country by far, and that's McCormick Place in Chicago. And they do
Not Rosemont.
Rosemont is not the biggest convention center in the country, nor is it the biggest convention center in the Chicago area. McCormick has it beat by a mile. McCormick is absolutely massive. Been going there since 1989, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
So the national is what? How many thousand square feet? 200,000?
Yeah, probably a little bit more, maybe 400.
Maybe 400?
Yeah,
Yeah, 400
maybe.
sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things.
So talk about the logistics. Talk about when you're putting on a show, and I know that's not the biggest show in the world, but what when you're picking the physical building,
Mhm.
what do you have to think of?
Well, one thing is the bigger convention centers operate on a, we talked a little bit about a lost leader before we came on air for something else, but all they care about is hospitality. The convention centers aren't a private entity. They're made to bring room nights and hotel and restaurant reservations and rental cars and flights and all that stuff. So that's what these big conventions bring to the table. And a lot of times they'll get the space for free, right? They don't get the labor for free, but a lot of times they'll get the space for free. Now the national the NSCC is brings in a lot of people, no doubt, but it also brings in a lot of day trippers and stuff like that, especially in Chicago. So it isn't something that any other city is really clamoring or any other major city is clamoring to get. So it's a twofold thing, right? Nobody's really courting the national because they're not, people are spending more money inside the room than they are probably outside on hospitality. I mean, Moynihan must have had 12 people in 3 beds and a cot in his room. So think about that it does rent out hotel nights, but there's a lot of people shacking up and stuff like that,
Well, he
bunking up.
didn't read the fine print when he started subletting his hotel room with ads in the paper. I know.
It reminded me of Seinfeld when Kramer had the Cubans in his
Yeah.
bureau. So that's kind of what was going on. But there's that part, right? Rosemont is, a destination way down on the list of most large conventions. It serves its purpose, and I'm an advocate for it being at Rosemont every year. I just think it works for many reasons, but it's not going to be, the Javits Center where that show's coming up this summer is just to me, it seems like there's no way anybody's making money, and it's great because Fanatics can write the whole thing off, right?
You're talking about Fanatics is putting on Fanatics Fest in New York City, and if you're not from, I don't know, the Earth, the Javits Center is the convention center in New York City.
Yeah, and you have Teamsters that you don't cut deals with.
Well,
You have
I want to talk
electricians
about
that you
this,
don't cut deals with. You have carpenters that you don't cut deals with. So,
but this isn't every city has a version of this. New
uh,
York,
no, I mean, you can go to Atlanta and you can do where they have Culture Collision. It's a free for all. You don't have to hire anybody. You can bring a
okay,
semi truck in and have all
but I'm saying
your sister wives help you unload it. You don't have to hire local labor.
the drive right in
Yeah,
model.
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
but there's no getting around that at McCormick Place. There's no getting around that in Philly. There's no getting around that in the DC Convention Center. I mean, Baltimore, where you're from,
they
that's
won't
a heavy
guarantee the
that's a
hotel room
heavy I mean,
nights.
that's a heavy union facility as well. It's just not as expensive as some other places,
So you
like
made the joke on another show that at the Javits Center to use an extension cord's $100 or something.
it's probably $250 to get a 20 amp circuit run to yours.
All kidding aside, will you
Yeah.
explain the process of if a dealer wants an extension cord? They literally go through the management and
Yeah,
pay.
well, what happens is typically what'll happen is Javits runs a little bit differently because they have their own in-house electrical. But McCormick Place, LA, San Diego, they'll hire electrical contractor company like Freeman or Edland or Trade Show Electric or GES, and they bring in the crew and they tap into they pay the building a small portion, but they're paying a gent or a gal to plug into the floor pocket, run a cable out 25 feet, tape it down, put a little power strip on the end of it, and that's that. So you're paying for labor, and a lot of these places run on the assumption that cable is going to get trashed or stolen or whatever. So you're essentially paying for the cable, and that they've reused many times over and over and over again. That's just for that internet, right? If you've ever gone to a convention center on any show and tried to get a day pass on the internet, usually it's pretty expensive, especially for an exhibitor. It'll cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you want internets
Yeah.
in your booth to tap into that. The tables, the skirts, all that stuff. I worked in the Philadelphia at the convention center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Convention Center. One time it took two unions to put up one piece of pipe and drape, because one union would do the drape and the other union, the carpenters, would do the drape, and the laborers would do the pipe and base. So
Oh, so
I'm in Chicago next week, right, where I have to hire the IBW projectionist. I have to hire the IBW broadcast, the projectionist union, the stagehand union, Teamsters, the carpenters union, and the decorators union to work in the one room that I'm doing. So, and know that every one of those folks has a different break time and different parameters to their some get overtime after 8, some after 9, some after 4:30, some before 8 o'clock. So there's so much to worry about when you put these shows on. And everybody, where eventually where are they going to pass it on to? They're going to pass it on to the consumer. I think the National does a wonderful job picking places like Cleveland and
more
Chicago.
affordable.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense because, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a convention center downtown in Cleveland. It's probably a little bit more expensive, right? Atlantic City, as much as everybody rails against that, it's a B or a C market. So, you can't kill your dealers. However much the table costs, it's going to cost you an
Well, I
awful
want to
lot
get into
more to
this.
get your stuff to the table.
So the National is the one who charges the dealers. So the National would have the contract with the convention center, and the dealers have the contract with the national management. The national management sets the price of the tables.
Well, keep in mind that in between that layer, typically, I think that's the case here. In between that layer of the building and the promoter or the dealers, the association is, you have to hire an expo company that does all the pipe and drape, provides the tables, all that stuff. So
Okay.
not all the buildings. I mean, buildings have tables, but you're typically hiring a third party that works in that building and to deal with certain things like tables, pipe and drape, carpeting, all that fun stuff.
So they've got to divide that cost somewhere.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So Atlantic City at the National, there's a couple different things. An old bylaw that I believe they still stick to is you can't have the National in the same state or a neighboring state in consecutive years.
Right,
Uh,
which is not the case anymore, right? Because they're doing Chicago 2 years in a row,
yeah.
right?
Well, no,
Yeah.
they're doing Chicago, Cleveland, Chicago.
I thought after next year, it's gonna be Chicago, Chicago.
Oh, is it? Well, good. Finally, if they broke
Yeah.
that.
Well, I
That
mean, that's tough, right? Because the premise was to put a state in between, which for
Yep.
whatever reason, somebody thought that made sense, and I get it, but, that's why
We've
something
got
like
our wagons west now,
yeah,
John.
right. I always thought a place that kinda checks all the boxes, was St. Louis, because it has a bigger convention center and it's the cost of labor is a little lower, but the problem was that was always contiguous to, Illinois. So,
Yeah.
I think that was one of the things, and there are options out there, but, people moan about, the East Coast presence, but the hobby is East Coast centric. The sport of baseball and football for, baseball longer, but they were East Coast sports. hockey, East
You
Coast
might
sports. It was just the way it was.
you might know this stat or have heard this stat, but I want to say something like 80% of the collecting world is within a 4-hour drive of Baltimore. And
Yeah.
so
Well, you
if you
look at card show
if you go
maps.
to
I always
Philly,
quote
you
cardshowmaps.com. That's tells you kind of where the card shows are, and it doesn't lie. It's a big country, I get it. And but of there are a lot of card shows on the East Coast, and Midwest to the East Coast. So that's that. I mean, it's not gonna and a lot of these dealers are old school. I know times are changing, but man, it's tough to get everybody out to Denver. Okay. It would just be tough to drag because that's not convenient for anybody other than the people that live in Denver, as far as dealers and stuff like that.
and dealers work on a seniority scale, and you can't just go when you want. You get one skip of an appearance, and otherwise you lose your place in line.
Yeah,
So
something like that, right? I
something
mean,
like that.
yeah,
So
but there's all sorts of shenanigans that still happen.
there are, but my
There's
point is
dealers that have
to some
several
of these
tables.
dealers,
Yeah.
they make a lot of their money at the national, and I would hate to see
Yeah.
it go somewhere where they can't go.
Yeah, and, you need to be it kinda needs to be a hub because if people aren't gonna drive, they need to fly, Chicago checks that box. People always talk about Orlando and stuff like that. First of all, Orlando in the summertime is brutal.
Yeah.
Secondly, that massive building, it's actually 2 buildings now. I mean, they have other things that going on that fill the restaurants and fill for as affluent as many hobbyists are, they aren't when they're on the site, they're on the show site. They're not spreading that money around,
It's a
they're
very
not.
classy group, John.
Yeah, I know. They're not
Right
going to
next to the
SeaWorld
plumbing
and stuff like
convention.
that. So
Yeah.
Orlando's that's a no-go. A place like Atlanta might have a shot, but Atlanta's kind of a dump downtown. No offense to, there's a reason why the
Whoa.
Braves aren't there anymore, right?
Hey, I went to school there. I've got a fondness for Atlanta, but it's a very
Where'd you go to school?
Emory.
Oh, Emory, okay. Oh, whatever,
Um,
dude. It's a dump now. I don't care what you say.
you're not wrong.
Uh,
I call it a northern city that ended up in the South.
okay.
Nobody's from Atlanta.
Yeah. I mean, the point with that stuff is the right to work things definitely make it cheaper. I think Dallas would have a shot. People complain at the airport. The airport,
Well, and because
Dallas airport's just as far as
Dallas
the
card
Philly
show,
airport. Yeah, I mean, but
you
you
get
know,
burnout
yeah,
in a
but
market.
Chicago does the sports Chicago and Wisconsin have a ton of shows. I mean, a ton of shows. I mean, they have the sports spectacular. They have the Rockford, Janesville. Bo's got the Madison Card Show. There's Oak Creek. There's like they've got a show every weekend somewhere. So they're used to shows, and it's a big base. But
Well, if we go
um,
to cardshowmaps.com, and if we go to where they don't have card shows, we're going to be in Anchorage.
yeah, well, or Albuquerque, New Mexico, and
How about Seattle, Washington?
too far, too remote, right? I mean, it's
No, but
a
but there's no card shows though.
well, there's a reason. It's there, you know,
um,
like you're gonna, talk about McDonald's isn't, building the restaurants
uh,
where all the hippie communes are where they don't eat meat, right? You gotta put the show where the meat eaters are, and
yes, but
there's
Doc Ellis will be signing autographs.
awesome. Still,
Um,
huh? Okay.
I have no idea. I,
Yeah,
I
he's
just
dead,
want to get.
by the way.
Well,
Yeah,
then
it's
may he rest in peace,
there's
Doc
so
Ellis.
many costs. There's so many costs to it.
Well,
Like I said, there's the labor cost. There's all that stuff, and it's like say they have found a sweet spot in Chicago. Whether it is a sweetheart deal, there's still Teamsters involved, but there's some sort of harmony in that building that doesn't, that makes it worth. It really is a sweet spot for the National to be apparently. So,
and if
yeah.
you've never seen it, and it partially explains the heat last year. Um, the actual driving in, the loading of the booze, the construction of the room is a massive undertaking, like you said, with unions and dealers and vehicles and cranes and all sorts of stuff. And my understanding is they took that right down to the wire last time, so the big garage door let in all that heat, and they could never recover.
Well, what happens is, and again, I had this with my event manager
Yeah.
last week. I would go in at 5 in the morning and it would be hot at 5 in the morning. And I'm like, hey, there's going to be 4,500 water bags in here at 8 o'clock. Let's turn it on now. They always have to be coaxed into turning on the AC because in the wintertime, it doesn't matter. You don't have to turn the heat on because once you get all those water bags in the room, it's going to
Right.
heat up. But in the summertime, it's a little
By
bit
the way,
more
water
reserved.
bags are also known as what?
Carbon-based forms or people.
Yeah.
So air conditioned, they're always gonna fight you on that. But there's places like Vegas that don't care. They pump the air all the time. But I mean, what you should do is at midnight you start bringing your air on, or 4 a.m. Bring your air on, so you walk in and it's 52 degrees. It's going to be cold in the morning, but then it'll level out instead of trying to get ahead of it or try to catch up to it as doors open and all that stuff. It really
Well,
is a lot of people in one room, and
yeah.
it's not unique. I've done shows, AAOS, American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, where there's 40 or 50,000 attendees, and they're moving just as slow because they're hanging out in the booths, and there's lights and all that stuff. There aren't a lot of lights at the National, but you just need to get ahead of it. And I think it was
I'm
one of those
sorry.
things
I
where it's
feel
the
like
perfect
I
time.
feel like it's got to be more comfortable for them to walk around
It is, but you know why? Because the
because of their
companies like
feet.
Johnson and Johnson and Depew and
Yeah.
Zimmer, they have padded carpeting. They pay for that stuff,
See,
right?
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That is a choice that people are making to avoid.
Well, how are you going to roll your Pelican around on a padded carpet, right? I mean, that's
Let me tell you where that is on my list of concerns.
uh,
I'll take.
go find one of your big industry buddies and go stand in their booth for a while. I'm sure the carpet's padded. Uh,
I did trade shows for many, many years in my old private life, and we took pride. And it's not the carpet; it's the padding underneath.
it is the padding, yeah. Oh,
And
for sure, man. But like anything, that costs money. to
well,
uh
yep,
to install everything costs money. So it's not that kind of show, like it's just not that kind of show. It is a down and dirty show, and I didn't have any problems with my feet. Right, often walk 30,000 steps a day, usually in circles, and it's not a big deal. Right, you just change your shoes, change your socks every now and then, you're good to go.
all right. So if it's up to you on the home stretch here, what's important to you actually for enjoying the show, from the nuts and bolts and logistics side, for actually appreciating the show? Is it proper space in the room, not too crowded?
Why? I'll tell you what it is. It's
Yeah,
wider aisles, obviously, right?
yeah,
By the way, I just promoted my first card show this weekend, so I get it. It wasn't a big show, but it was a big enough show where we had to
congrats.
be concerned about aisles and stuff like that. Wider aisles. Now, here's what a lot of other people don't get, and I have to tell myself all the time is I'd rather there be an industry pavilion somewhere that isn't in the middle of the floor and breaks up the middle of the floor. With that said, there's a lot of people like myself that would not go there, so they're paying a lot of money. The industry people are paying a lot of money, and they want foot traffic, and the only way to get that is to intersperse them um, amongst the tables. Otherwise, people like me are never going to even go down that side of the building.
Right.
So, you know, I- it's a double edged sword. It's no secret that I despise the industry end of things. But that I guess that has to happen. We're never going to go back to having a true card show again, a real card show. It's gonna be
And
an event.
frankly, they offset a lot of cost.
They do, absolutely, they do, and maybe that's where they catch a little bit of a break on the union end of it, where if they keep enough union people busy with the LED walls they put up and the signs they hang and all that stuff, then the average Joe or Josephine can just essentially do what they want, which is great because it's supposed to be a card show.
All right, Mr. Keating, anything else you want to add to
Yeah, it's just not as simple as people think it is, as far as having it. As some people have said, have the National at the Javits Center. That's the most asinine idea I've ever heard. There's buildings that certainly could handle it, capacity wise, but logistically, imagine everybody trying to go to Javits, paying $80 in parking and paying $20 for the halal and all that stuff, or $30 for the halal. And it's just it's crazy to say, it just because you want it near you or
Yeah.
you want it in a
Well,
prestigious place doesn't mean it's gonna work out. And
I think I started the phone call off air with everybody wants the national near them. So let's go talk about that.
yeah,
Uh,
well, you
you just finished it perfect.
yeah, not everybody is as a deep a thinker as they think, or I kind of grasp it. I mean, that's they're
Oh, the water
yeah. Tell
bags.
them that, yeah, the water bags who probably wear Velcro sneakers. So it's life is tough out there. So,
What last point that I wanted to ask you? Best national you've been to?
um, well, I was at the Anaheim one.
Oh,
Uh,
you were
I was at the Anaheim in 1991. I rode there
one,
on my
yeah.
motorcycle with my wife. I was living in Redondo Beach. So
Highest attendance in theory up until last year, was it?
yeah, well,
Or
who knows?
they won't say it now.
Well, like, why won't they say it, right? Like, why won't
Right.
they say it? What's the point? Where this is a industry that's driven on, and a hobby that's driven on numbers, whether it's statistics on the back of cards, whether it's the number that's imprinted on the card, all that stuff. And for some reason, management can't get behind releasing those numbers, which I think is kind of silly. We're all about numbers, so. But Anaheim was great. I've been to, I don't know, 4 or 5. Atlantic City in the 80s, Atlantic City again. Maybe this will be my 5th this summer. So it's going into last year. I was saying it was just a card show, and I had an absolute ball. So I've kind of uh, put that behind me. It really is quite an extravaganza. So
I just want to hear you say it. It's
what
about the people, isn't it?
it is, but it's also, I mean, I spend very little time on the show floor with people. It's just
Yes.
about, there's just enough people though that you have something in common with, that makes it great, So yeah, it's a good time. Everybody should do it. You shouldn't have FOMO, but everybody should do it for sure. It's If you want to go to a card show, it's in the middle of summer for a reason. Just go and listen. Cleveland's got a lot going on too. I know we got the Hall of Fames there, a couple of them.
Yep.
We got Sandusky, which is where Cedar Point is. There's a lot of options out there. Make it a family trip if you want to.
And the
It'll be fun.
Guardians are in town for at least part of the week.
All right, well, maybe we'll go, huh? I'll go get
Yeah.
myself a big, fat, Oscar Gamble, wig, and we'll go out there and try to
That's why
get an ice cream helmet on my fro.
people don't know that's why we're wearing the hats. It's just to hide the hair. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
cut
it's
the hair.
hiding all that hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
Sweet. Go to the National, have fun, everybody. It'll be a blast.
But appreciate what around you, the sheer size of it, because when we all complain or we all say what we like, it stems from buildings and people that put it together. So give good
And
feedback. Don't just bitch.
And instead of wanting the national where you are, go just keep enjoying the shows you have. Support those because they have a distinct flavor.
Well, so
That makes it unique to your area. So, and we're spread out a little bit. Go to, I've been to shows all over the country. Just spread out. Expand your horizons. Don't bring your horizons to you. You go find your horizons.
and with that fortune cookie, I think we're out of here.
Tito out.
All right, Tito. For episode 660 of Hobby Think Tank, it is Rigoberto and Danny saying, "See you later."
Ciao, baby.
See ya.